The story surrounding the Whitaker family has taken another unexpected turn, and this time the focus isn't on fundraising, legal filings, or public arguments between creators. Instead, it's about something that has left many longtime followers asking a simple question. If the family was removed from public attention to protect their privacy, how did new photographs of them reportedly make their way back onto the internet? For months, viewers have watched this situation become increasingly complicated. What began as videos introducing millions of people to the Whitaker family eventually turned into investigations, public accusations, lawsuits, criminal charges against one individual, and ongoing questions about what really happened behind the scenes. Throughout all of it, one theme has remained constant. Everyone claims they wanted what was best for the family. Now another controversy has emerged. According to reports circulating among several content creators, photographs allegedly showing members of the Whitaker family while they were in state care appeared online. If true, the situation raises a much larger issue than internet drama. It raises questions about privacy, responsibility, and whether vulnerable adults are truly being protected. Regardless of where someone stands on the ongoing disputes between Eric Carroll, Patrick Raw, or any of the other personalities involved, this issue deserves to be looked at separately. Because if these photographs were never meant to become public, then the conversation changes completely. The first question isn't who posted them. The first question is how they existed outside the facility at all. Facilities responsible for caring for vulnerable adults typically operate under strict privacy policies. Staff members are generally prohibited from sharing photographs of residents without authorization. In many situations, unauthorized photography can violate both workplace policies and privacy laws. That is why the reported appearance of these images immediately caught people's attention. If someone inside a facility took the photographs without permission, that could represent a serious breach of trust. If someone outside the facility somehow obtained them, that raises an entirely different set of questions. And if the images were legitimately authorized by family members or legal guardians, then people naturally want clarification before jumping to conclusions. Right now, however, much of the discussion remains based on claims made by content creators rather than official confirmation. That's an important distinction. One thing many viewers have pointed out is the irony of the situation. The Whitaker family became the center of public controversy largely because people argued they had been overexposed online. Numerous creators debated whether filming their daily lives crossed ethical boundaries. Supporters of intervention argued that removing the family from that environment would finally give them privacy. Critics argued that the removal itself caused more harm than good. Regardless of which position someone supported, almost everyone agreed on one point. If the family entered protected care, their privacy should finally be respected. That's why reports of leaked photographs generated such strong reactions. Many viewers weren't upset simply because pictures existed. They were asking why any new pictures needed to be shown publicly at all. One argument made by several commentators is that audiences simply wanted reassurance. People had spent years watching the family. Many wondered whether Timmy, Lorraine, and Ray were healthy. Were they together? Were they safe? Were they receiving proper care? Those are understandable questions from viewers who followed the family's story. But reassurance doesn't necessarily require photographs. A verified update from officials, or from authorized representatives, would accomplish much of the same goal without exposing individuals who may not be capable of consenting to widespread internet distribution. That's where the ethical debate becomes complicated. Some creators argue that showing the images proves the family is doing well. Others argue that even if the intent was positive, publishing the photographs simply repeats the same cycle of exploitation critics said they wanted to stop. That debate is unlikely to disappear anytime soon. Another important point involves consent. For most adults, deciding whether to appear online is a personal choice. But when someone has significant cognitive disabilities, questions about informed consent become much more complicated. Can they fully understand where those images might spread? Can they understand millions of strangers viewing them? Can they understand that once something appears online, it may remain searchable forever? Those questions don't have easy answers. That's why facilities caring for vulnerable adults usually establish strict rules regarding photography. Those policies exist to protect people whose ability to make fully informed decisions may be limited. It's also worth remembering that the Whitaker family became famous almost accidentally. They didn't build a social media brand. They didn't launch a YouTube channel. Their lives became public because other people documented them. That reality places an even greater responsibility on everyone else involved. Throughout this entire controversy, viewers have repeatedly returned to one central issue. Who benefits? If photographs are shared primarily because they generate clicks, views, or renewed attention, critics argue the family once again becomes content instead of people. If they are shared solely to reassure supporters, then many ask why that reassurance couldn't come in another form. Either way, the discussion shifts away from personalities and back toward the individuals at the center of the story. Timmy, Lorraine, Ray. No matter what people think about the various creators covering this case, those three individuals remain the reason anyone is paying attention in the first place. Their well-being should remain the priority. Another observation many viewers have made is that controversies like this demonstrate how difficult it is to separate genuine concern from online incentives. Internet attention rewards exclusive information. It rewards leaked material. It rewards breaking news. Sometimes those incentives conflict with respecting someone's privacy. That's not unique to this case. It's something seen repeatedly across social media whenever vulnerable people become subjects of public fascination. The challenge becomes deciding where documentation ends and exploitation begins. Reasonable people may disagree about exactly where that line exists, but most would probably agree that protected individuals deserve greater, not lesser, privacy than everyone else. That brings the conversation back to accountability. If the photographs truly originated inside a care facility without authorization, investigators, not internet commentators, are the ones who should determine what happened. If policies were violated, appropriate consequences should follow. If no policies were violated, that clarification would also help reduce speculation. Until then, much of the discussion remains exactly that, speculation. And speculation should never replace evidence. The Whitaker family story has already been shaped by assumptions, accusations, and competing narratives. Adding more unsupported conclusions doesn't help anyone. What viewers can reasonably ask for is transparency. Not invasive transparency. Not constant updates. But enough information to reassure the public that vulnerable individuals are receiving appropriate care while respecting their dignity. Those goals don't have to conflict. As this story continues to evolve, one lesson keeps repeating itself. Sometimes the biggest question isn't whether information can be shared. It's whether it should be. If protecting vulnerable adults was truly the purpose behind removing them from constant online exposure, then everyone involved, from institutions to content creators, has a responsibility to honor that principle. Because once privacy becomes conditional, it stops being privacy at all. And that's the question many people are asking today. Were these photographs helping the Whitaker family? Or were they simply creating another chapter in a story that should finally be about the family's well-being instead of internet attention? Only a thorough investigation and verified facts can answer that. Until then, the debate is likely to continue. The reported photo controversy has also exposed something bigger than one upload or one creator. It has highlighted how quickly the internet can lose sight of the people at the center of a story. For months, The conversation has been dominated by accusations, investigations, competing narratives, and public disputes between content creators. Meanwhile, the people everyone claims to care about, the Whitaker family, have rarely had a voice in any of it. That is why the discussion surrounding these alleged leaked photographs deserves more attention than the personalities involved. If the reports are accurate, then someone made a decision that private images should become public. Whether that decision came from an individual acting alone, from a misunderstanding of policy, or from another source entirely is something that only an official investigation could determine. Until then, everyone should be careful not to assume facts that have not been established. Still, even without knowing every detail, it's reasonable to ask whether publishing those images was necessary. Many supporters of the family have explained that they simply wanted reassurance. After months of silence, they wanted to know whether Timmy, Lorraine, and Ray were healthy. They wondered whether they were adjusting to their new surroundings. They hoped they were receiving appropriate medical attention and living in a safer environment than before. Those concerns are understandable. People followed the family's story for years. They watched birthdays, holidays, medical appointments, home improvements, and ordinary moments that gradually made the Whitakers feel familiar. Even though viewers were strangers, many became emotionally invested in the family's well-being. But there's a difference between wanting reassurance and expecting unlimited access. Privacy does not disappear simply because someone became well-known online. In fact, many would argue the opposite. Once someone's life has been placed under an intense public spotlight, protecting what privacy remains becomes even more important. That is one reason this latest controversy has generated such strong reactions. Some people viewed the reported photographs as proof that the family appeared healthy and cared for. Others saw the exact same images as another example of vulnerable adults becoming internet content. Both reactions can exist at the same time. Seeing someone appear healthy can certainly provide comfort. But if those images were never intended to become public, then the method by which they reached viewers becomes just as important as what the pictures actually showed. Another point worth considering is how quickly online communities divide into opposing camps. Instead of asking whether something was appropriate, discussions often become arguments over who shared it, which creator exposed it, or whose side benefits from it. That shifts attention away from the central issue. The real question isn't whether one creator gains views or another loses credibility. The real question is whether the individuals in those photographs deserve greater protection than they received. That question remains regardless of which channel discussed the images first. One observation that continues to come up throughout this entire case is how incentives shape online behavior. Exclusive information attracts attention. Breaking news attracts clicks. Leaked material often spreads faster than verified statements. Those incentives exist across nearly every platform. But when vulnerable adults are involved, many people believe creators have an added ethical responsibility to slow down before publishing something that cannot be taken back. Once an image spreads across social media, there is no realistic way to retrieve it. Copies are downloaded. Screenshots are shared. Videos are clipped. Even if the original upload disappears, the content often continues circulating indefinitely. That permanence is exactly why privacy policies exist in hospitals, assisted living facilities, and other care environments. Those rules are not designed to make information difficult to access. They exist because vulnerable people deserve protection that extends beyond medical treatment. Dignity is part of care. Respect is part of care. Privacy is part of care. Throughout the broader Whitaker controversy, many creators have criticized one another over who genuinely wanted to help the family and who was motivated primarily by financial incentives. Those debates are likely to continue. However, this latest issue presents an opportunity to step back from personal conflicts and ask a broader question. What should responsible coverage look like? Responsible reporting doesn't require silence. Public interest stories can absolutely be discussed. Investigations can be examined. Court filings can be analyzed. Fundraising efforts can be questioned. Public statements can be compared. Those are legitimate subjects for commentary. But there's an important distinction between discussing public events and publishing private material involving people who may not be capable of giving meaningful consent. That distinction matters. Another aspect receiving attention is the apparent lack of official communication throughout this process. Much of the speculation surrounding the family's current condition exists because reliable information has been limited. Whenever official updates are scarce, rumors tend to fill the gap. Different creators begin citing unnamed sources. Viewers compare conflicting accounts. Small pieces of information become exaggerated as they pass from one channel to another. Eventually, separating verified fact from assumptions becomes increasingly difficult. That's exactly why careful reporting matters. If a claim cannot be confirmed, it should remain identified as a claim. If something is based on opinion, it should be presented as opinion. Maintaining that distinction helps viewers understand where certainty ends and speculation begins. In the Whitaker story, those boundaries have sometimes become blurred. The result has been confusion, frustration, and growing distrust among audiences trying to understand what actually happened. The reported photograph leak illustrates that problem perfectly. Some viewers immediately accepted every detail. Others dismissed the entire story. The truth may ultimately prove to be more complicated than either extreme. That is why patience remains important. Investigations take time. Facts emerge gradually. Premature conclusions often create more confusion than clarity. Another recurring theme involves accountability. If privacy policies were violated, accountability should follow. If confidential material was improperly shared, there should be consequences for whoever was responsible. But accountability also requires evidence. Internet speculation cannot replace formal findings, nor should public opinion determine guilt before investigations conclude. That principle applies equally regardless of who is being discussed. The Whitaker family has already endured enormous changes. Their living arrangements changed. Their daily routines changed. The public conversations surrounding them changed dramatically. Whatever disagreements exist between creators, one hope seems nearly universal. People want the family to be safe. People want them treated with dignity. People want them to receive proper care. If those goals are truly shared, then decisions about publishing private material should be evaluated through that lens. Does it help the family? Does it protect the family? Or does it primarily serve the audience's curiosity? Those questions may not always have easy answers, but they remain worth asking. As more information eventually becomes public through official channels, many of today's uncertainties may finally be resolved. Until then, responsible commentary means acknowledging what is known, recognizing what remains uncertain, and resisting the temptation to fill gaps with assumptions. That approach may not generate the most dramatic headlines. It may not satisfy viewers hoping for immediate answers. But in stories involving real people, especially vulnerable adults, it is often the most responsible path forward. Because long after internet debates fade away, the individuals at the center of this story will continue living with the consequences of decisions made by others. That is something every creator, commentator, and viewer should remember before clicking share. The biggest lesson from the entire Whitaker story may not be about one creator, one fundraiser, or one investigation. It may be about what happens when vulnerable people become the center of an online phenomenon. Once millions of viewers become emotionally invested in someone's life, it becomes increasingly difficult to separate genuine concern from entertainment, advocacy from influence, and transparency from exposure. The reported leak of photographs has forced many people to ask where that line should be drawn. For years, the Whitaker family lived largely outside the public eye. Then a series of viral videos introduced them to millions of people around the world. Viewers watched birthdays, conversations on the porch, shopping trips, doctor's appointments, and moments that most families experience privately. Because those moments were shared so frequently, many followers began to feel connected to the family. That connection wasn't necessarily unhealthy. Many people genuinely wanted to see the family succeed. Some donated money. Some sent supplies. Others simply watched and hoped their lives would improve. But the internet has a way of changing relationships. When viewers become emotionally attached, they naturally begin expecting updates. When updates stop, curiosity grows. When curiosity grows, rumors fill the silence. Eventually, someone claims to have exclusive information. Someone else claims to have photographs. Another person claims to know what really happened behind closed doors. Before long, the conversation stops being about verified facts and becomes a competition over who has the latest revelation. That appears to be exactly where this story has arrived. Instead of discussing how the family is adapting, much of the conversation now revolves around who leaked photographs, who shared them, who criticized them, and who benefited from the attention. Meanwhile, the family itself remains largely silent. That silence is understandable. Unlike content creators, they are not producing updates for an audience. Unlike commentators, they are not participating in public debates. And unlike viewers, they may not even be aware of the thousands of conversations happening about them every single day. That perspective is easy to lose online. The people at the center of the story are living real lives while everyone else debates them from a distance. Another issue raised by this situation is the responsibility that comes with receiving sensitive material. Suppose someone unexpectedly receives photographs that appear to come from a private care setting. There are several possible responses. One option is to publish them immediately. Another is to verify their authenticity before saying anything. A third is to decline to publish them at all. Reasonable people may disagree about which choice is best, but many ethics experts would argue that the final option deserves serious consideration whenever vulnerable adults are involved. Just because information reaches someone does not automatically create an obligation to publish it. Sometimes the most responsible editorial decision is deciding not to share something. That principle exists throughout journalism. News organizations regularly receive information they ultimately decide not to publish because the public interest does not outweigh the potential harm. Online content creation often operates under different incentives. Exclusive content generates attention. Attention generates views. Views generate revenue. That doesn't automatically mean every creator acts irresponsibly. But it does create pressure to publish material quickly before someone else does. That pressure can sometimes lead to decisions that deserve closer examination. Another important question concerns public trust. Throughout this controversy, many creators have asked viewers to believe their sources, their interpretations, and their conclusions. Trust is earned through consistency. That means acknowledging uncertainty whenever uncertainty exists. If something cannot yet be confirmed, saying so openly actually strengthens credibility rather than weakening it. Viewers increasingly recognize the difference between evidence and speculation. In long-running stories like this one, maintaining that distinction becomes essential. Otherwise, audiences eventually struggle to determine which claims are supported by documentation and which are based primarily on opinion. The Whitaker case has become an example of how quickly that line can blur. Different creators often present the same event in dramatically different ways. One emphasizes financial questions. Another focuses on legal issues. Someone else examines ethical concerns. Each perspective may contribute something valuable, but none should replace verified facts. One topic that continues to surface is accountability. Many viewers believe unanswered financial questions deserve clarification. Others are more concerned about decisions surrounding the family's removal. Still others focus primarily on privacy and the treatment of vulnerable adults. Those discussions will likely continue until investigations conclude and additional official information becomes available. But accountability should apply broadly. If fundraising occurred, transparency matters. If privacy was compromised, transparency matters. If mistakes were made by institutions, transparency matters there as well. Accountability should not depend on whose actions happen to support one side of an online argument. The standard should remain consistent. Another lesson from this story is how quickly internet communities become polarized. People often feel pressure to choose sides. Support one creator. Oppose another. Defend one version of events. Reject every competing narrative. Real life is rarely that simple. It is entirely possible for multiple people to make mistakes. It is possible for good intentions to produce harmful outcomes. It is possible for critics to raise legitimate concerns while also making assumptions that later prove incorrect. Recognizing that complexity does not weaken an argument. It strengthens it. The Whitaker story deserves that kind of careful analysis because the consequences extend far beyond YouTube disagreements. Real people have experienced major changes in their lives. Those changes deserve thoughtful discussion rather than endless speculation. As viewers, there's also a role to play. Audiences influence creator behavior. Videos that reward outrage tend to encourage more outrage. Videos that reward careful analysis encourage better reporting. Every click sends a message about what kind of content people value. That doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. It means supporting conversations grounded in evidence instead of rumor. Ultimately, perhaps the most important question is not who wins the public argument. It is whether the Whitaker family receives the dignity, privacy, and stability that everyone claims to want for them. If the answer is yes, then that outcome matters far more than which creator gains subscribers or proves a point. If the answer is no, then everyone involved, from institutions to creators to viewers, should reflect on how things reach this point. Because once vulnerable people become symbols in an online controversy, it's easy to forget they are individuals first. Timmy is not simply a headline. Lorraine is not simply a talking point. Ray is not simply part of a viral story. They are human beings whose lives continue long after the latest video ends. That perspective should guide every discussion moving forward. As official investigations continue and additional information becomes available, the public will likely receive clearer answers about many of the unanswered questions surrounding this case. Until then, patience, careful analysis, and respect for verified facts remain the strongest foundation for any discussion. The internet rarely rewards patience, but justice and truth often require it. Whatever conclusions eventually emerge, one principle should remain unchanged. Vulnerable individuals deserve protection, privacy, and respect above all else. The Whitaker story has already taught many difficult lessons. Hopefully, the next chapter will focus less on controversy and more on ensuring that the family receives the care, dignity, and stability they deserve. If new verified information becomes available, it should help answer the public's remaining questions, not create even more uncertainty. Because in the end, the goal should never be winning an online debate. The goal should be making sure the people at the center of the story are treated with humanity, regardless of how much public attention surrounds them. And perhaps that's the one point everyone, regardless of which side they support, can agree on.